Hello there, and welcome to Conversations About Conversations. My name is Ivan Farber. I'm the host. I'm joined by my co-host, Jules Swisher. She's my pal, my friend, my neighbor. Howdy, neighbor.
Howdy,
And
partner.
howdy, partner. And we are also joined by special guest, David DeCelle. David is a speaker, entrepreneur, coach. He's the president of Model FA. David, welcome to Conversations About Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me, and a special shout out to Michael for making the initial introduction. Without him, we wouldn't be doing this today.
Today's topic is building relationships systematically, being intentional, being methodical, being thoughtful, and being systematic, and making sure folks get an outstanding experience when they're talking with you, which is like so aligned with how I think about conversations. So I'm really interested in how you think about it, because I expect it to be similar and also different.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to dive in and share.
Yeah. So how about just opening statement, whatever kind of comes to mind, and what you'd like to accomplish in this conversation?
So I think two main things when you're looking to build relationships. Number one is think about when it's your birthday and you have a bunch of people reaching out to you that maybe you haven't heard from in a while. When you have people shooting you a text or a phone call or a card or something like that, you feel incredibly special that day because you're just filled with love, filled with appreciation, and people tend to go out of their way to share what they do appreciate about you. So how I try and interact with the folks in my world, family, friends, prospects, clients, etc., is just make it feel like it's their birthday every time we have an interaction. And what I find with most people is, if there's 50 folks that I'm paying attention to, so to speak, at any given point in time, there's usually 5 or 10 of those people that building relationships with them are just intuitive, because you have similar interests and tastes and things that you guys can connect on. But the other 40 to 45 folks, it's not as natural. So I find that a lot of people say that I'm good at building relationships, but I use my calendar, I use a software system. I track this stuff so that I don't have to think about building a relationship. I just get a notification, hey, do this for this person on this day. And it seems like it's intuitive to them, but it's very systematic on my end. So I guess I would start with that, where the more you can make it feel like it's their birthday. So I get that from a book by Tony Hsieh called Delivering Happiness, which was one of the first books that I've read when I got into business, and it just really stuck with me. And then doing so in a systematic way, because we've all, I'm sure, had those moments in our lives and in our businesses where we wake up and we're like, oh gosh, we haven't talked to this person in 6 months, right? But if you can have these simple touch points along the way, whether it be wishing them a happy birthday, or sending a book or a resource, like Michael, for example, when he made the introduction, he sent me a copy of your book. That's an excellent example of advancing the relationship, right? And it only costs what, 15 or 20 bucks plus shipping, and maybe 10 minutes of time, and Michael's now in a, there you go, right? Michael's now in a different category, right? Michael actually cares about me and the relationship, and that shows. So he's just, again, in a different category than some of the surface level relationships of people who don't reciprocate with the investment of time in actually building that relationship. And the last thing I'll say before kind of turning it back to you is, people, I feel like a lot of times think that trust is built based on time, right? It takes time. I actually disagree with that. I think that trust is simply the accumulation of experiences. And if you connect with someone, or you get introduced to someone, and then you connect with them on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, well, what happens is they get a notification every time you do that. And then what happens when you get a new friend or a new follower? You kind of scroll through their page and see who they are. So they're getting a good sense as to who you are. And if you send them a resource, you give them a quick call, you connect them with someone else, you send them a handwritten note, you go out to lunch, you can really compress the time it takes to build a relationship just by adding these experiences together in a shorter period of time. And then you got them locked, and vice versa. So I guess that would be my opening thoughts.
I love that. And happy birthday to you.
Thanks.
I've never heard that one before, but that does allow you to really approach people like, hey, you're special and I want you to have a good experience in interacting with me and have a good experience that day.
And of course, it needs to be genuine, right? It can't be like overly manufactured. And another book that I'm sure a lot of people have read, and if not, you should, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the general theme of that book is being more interested than interesting. So the more you can, ask questions or ask how to be a resource, the more or the better they feel. And therefore, over time, the law of reciprocity kicks in. And if you're constantly trying to help them and add value to them, then they're going to want to do the same with you. But it starts with you asking great questions, you genuinely being interested for no other reason than being interested, right? You can't do so because, okay, I'm going to do this so that they buy something, because they're going to pick up on that. That's going to come out in your tone. It's going to come out in your actions, and just the energy that you're putting out. So the more genuinely interested you can be in the other human being that you're trying to build a relationship with, the better it will pan out over time.
Okay, I want to share one metaphor, and then I want to kind of take back and find your story, get back
Cool.
in your story. But as you were talking about the different connections that you have with people, I think of a relationship a lot of times as like a suspension bridge, and or what is the wire bridge? Like you have one wire and then another wire, and it gets stronger and stronger as you go.
Certainly, I agree with that.
But let's go back a little bit and hear a little bit of your story. Like, how did you come to work in financial services and doing what you're doing now?
So even before that, like super humble beginnings, blue collar background, and in college, I was fortunate in that I just happened to upload my resume to the career services portal. At that time, I was 20 years old. Northwestern Mutual reached out to me, and I started with their internship program. And I was there for 7 years, and I had a great experience there in terms of learning how to run a business, learning how to be tenacious, learning how to be resilient in that culture. And over that 7-year period, built up the practice to about 250,000 in annual revenue, while also running our new advisor development program. And our new advisor development program is ranked based on production. How many clients are you bringing over? How much insurance are you selling? How many assets are you gathering? And I was a 22-year-old leader. And if you're just listening to the audio, I got finger quotes up right now, which basically means I didn't know what I was doing. And our mission at that time was to identify the future leaders of our firm and to make sure that they're better off having met us than having not met us. As a result of that, I found that if I didn't think that they were going to stick around, I just subconsciously didn't care if they were better off having met us than having not met us. And that wasn't a good quality to have. And I also, just to take a step back on my personal production, I felt like every time I reached out to someone, it was because I was looking for their time, their money, or their network. And I wasn't actually reaching out to them because I wanted to just touch base with them. So what ended up happening is friends, family, prospects, and clients would answer calls, emails, and texts less. And like, that's not a good feeling. And I'll come back to that in a second. But back to the new advisor development program. I ran the program into the ground. We ranked like 300th in the company out of 350 offices. So what I did was after the first couple of years, realizing, well, this isn't working, decided to switch the mission around, and we did other things as well. But that was the main thing that we changed. And we just said, okay, we want to make sure that you're better off having met us than having not met us, and then to identify the future leaders of our firm. So what ended up happening was the training and develop that we focused on was less so on products and services and prospecting and things like that, and more heavy on personal development. And what ended up happening was over the next 4 years, brought that program up 9 of the 12 months that they rank us on that, number 1 in the country. And then I think once all the numbers shook out, we finished at like 4 or 5 in the country. And it was over that time period that I just fell in love with the development of other advisors, other humans, and wanted to do that full time. And so I decided to leave Northwestern back at the beginning of 2018 and start a consulting company called the Financial Advisors Alliance, which looking back is certainly a mouthful, and decided to go that route. And over that period of time, I needed to rebuild a lot of the relationships that I had severed previously when I was looking for their time, their money, and their network, excuse me. So I decided to do things like, calling at a minimum 2 people a day just to check in and see how they're doing, right? To rebuild and recultivate those relationships. And you fast forward, 2 years, over 2.5 years, actually, when I call someone, they answer. When I text someone, they respond. Like, no one ever really ghosts me anymore because they know I actually care about them. So back to starting the FAA, started that basically on my own. Had a friend, Adam, join me to help build it, after about a 6 to 9 month period. Over that period of time, I came across my now business partner, Patrick Brewer's Facebook ads. And, I gave my email to see what his email sequence was, because I planned on copying it, right? Because I saw, okay, this guy's running Facebook ads, and so he must be legit. So you fast forward, and I got on a sales call with their sales guy, Tim, whom I now coach on the team, and I kind of got in touch with Pat. So I got in touch with Pat and just had kind of a surface level conversation. Then I found out he was in the Boston area, so we met for coffee. This was probably 9 months into my business now. And then shortly thereafter, they were more focused on marketing. The company is called Brewer Consulting. I was more focused on coaching. They got interest in coaching, but they didn't want to build it out necessarily themselves. So I started doing contract work with him and his company for about 9 months or so while still running my company. And then we just started getting along. We had similar visions. We had different complementary skill set. And we finally were like, well, what are we doing? Let's just do this together, right? So we decided to rebrand. So they had acquired my consulting company and the folks that I was working with, their revenue, et cetera, and named me the president of what we now refer to as the Model FA, because not a ton of enterprise value in a mouthful of a name like my company was, or Brewer Consulting, where his last name is attached to it. So that's when we rebranded, became the Model FA. So now we offer things like coaching, group coaching. We have a digital learning portal. We have a bunch of office hours that advisors can attend. We work with individual clients, and we work with multi-billion-dollar firms, helping them with a variety of services. We also have a TAMP and an FMO. So if people want to place their client assets on our platform, or transact their insurance business through us, they can do that as well. And depending on how much they place on the platform or how much insurance they transact, they can use our services based on that and not based out of their checking account, right? So it's almost like a ladder system where the more you do, the more services you unlock. So fast forward to today, that's what we're doing now.
Jules, I bet you have some questions.
Oh, yes. Can you see me over here? I'm just brewing up with questions. So David, one of the things I'm going to address my first question from one of the things that you initially said, which I really love what you said about, I was always reaching out to people because I wanted their time, their money, or their network. Like that's like what all of us business people do. So my question for you is, while having that still in mind, like you still want those things, you still need those things for your business. What's your mindset when you're reaching out to people? Like, is your focus just different? Like, I'm going to reach out to you out of like a genuine care, but like with the long-term goal of transacting business together? Like, tell me more about that.
So the initial change in my mindset in that regard was, you look back to high school and college and you had to read these books, and I never read these books, and I would find someone in class that did read these books that would be happy to give me a summary of those books.
Yes.
I don't really like to be told what to do or when to do it, or read something that I don't think is valuable. And if someone does that, I just immediately disengage. And then once I discovered personal development books, B, Audible, because it's tough for me to sit down and read the book, but I can do it as I'm kind of walking around or driving or working out. You just started to learn, and I surrendered to the process of when you reach out to someone, first and foremost, it needs to be genuine. Second, you need to be trying to add value in some way, shape, or form. And you need to do those things without the expectation of anything, getting anything in return, fully knowing that in the back of your head, you will get something in return. It just may not be from that person. But the universe is always listening. The universe doesn't know if you donate $1 million. The universe doesn't know if you pick up a piece of trash. The universe just knows that you did good.
Mhm.
And I believe, and this is kind of from the book Go Giver, which is the more you give, the more you receive. And that
Mhm.
was something that I didn't grasp at my days in Northwestern. But over the last, 2.5, 3 years or so, I've just believed it. And there's been too many instances in my life where, I've paid, when I get a haircut, it's $25, but every now and again, I'll give my barber $100, and then
Mhm.
lo and behold, the next day or within a week, something amazing happens. Or,
Mhm.
you put away 2 shopping carts, and then something amazing happens. You smile at someone walking by, or you give them a compliment, and then something amazing happens that's totally unrelated. And there's been too many instances in my life to where that's happened, to where I can't not believe that. So I think it's an acceptance of a lot of people, especially me in my Northwestern days. I had a very scarcity oriented mindset. I have commission breath, which stinks, and everyone can smell it when you're walking around that way. And I think, it's very difficult to kind of surrender to the process and just trust that when you're a good human, you're doing kind things, and you're also working your butt off.
Mhm.
You kind of create your own conscious luck, as
Mhm.
opposed to, trying to force someone to do something because it benefits you. So hopefully that answers your question, but I think it's trusting the process, being a kind human, and working your butt off along the way, and great things happen as a result of that.
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting. So Ivan and I have been kind of talking about like trusting the process, giving it over, surrendering, and then I heard you say letting go of expectations. One of the things that I've been working on in my business is this if then mentality. Like if I reach out to this person, then I would expect them to give me business or whatever it is. And it sounds like you're saying that's not really necessarily a part of your mindset. It's more so I am going to reach out to this person, and then I'm going to trust that whether it comes back from that person or another person or another situation, that by me putting myself out there in a genuine and kind way, that I will then get back that in maybe ways that we don't even fully understand. A lot of times it's ways that we don't expect, but they're oftentimes better than what we wanted in the first place.
Yeah, I think too, when you reach out to someone, say, okay, if I do this, then I would expect this. You're, at least in my experience, when doing that, like, you push it further away and you create more resistance.
Mhm.
And it's an incredibly difficult thing to do, because like, you got bills to pay, you have
Yep.
goals to hit, like you have metrics to hit in a sales-based organization. But like an example is, this woman, Sarah, who I have a great relationship with, she actually coached me to run that new advisor development program at Northwestern. And we've maintained a good relationship. And earlier this year, we met when we were both in Denver, and we came up with a referral arrangement, because both of our consulting companies are complementary in nature in terms of who we serve as advisors and what we help them with. And, I've invested a lot in that relationship. I've tried to add a lot of value, as has she as well. And then randomly, I read these 2 books called Conscious Luck, which I referenced earlier, and then Love Money, Money Loves You. And that book is really cool because it speaks to you as like money is speaking to you. Here's how you get me. Here's how you ask for me. Here's how here's what you do with me, type of thing. It's just a very interesting take. And after reading both of those books, right, I think I finished it on a Thursday, and a couple weeks ago on a Friday at like just after 6 p.m. Eastern time, I get an email in my inbox, unsolicited. Hadn't talked to her in a few weeks, but mind you, they had me on their webinar. I sent them Model FA branded cupcakes in the mail. I called them both on their birthdays, which happened to be a week apart. So there was that investment in the relationship and the, hey, I care about you type of feel. And then just after 6 o'clock on a Friday, I look in my inbox And Sarah sent me over 50 referrals to advisors.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't plan that out back, 7, 8 years ago when I first met her, but I was a great client for her, and I would do things that she would ask me to do at that time. We then both leveled up and started working together and kind of collaborating. I then invested in the relationship. The cupcakes must have been really good too.
Yep.
And then, on her birthday and her partner Charity's birthday, I called them both, and they obviously connect on that and say, oh, I heard from David, and then, oh, I heard from David too, because it's just a week apart. And then you fast forward to Friday at 6 o'clock at night when someone should be, opening up a cocktail and just relaxing, putting their feet up. And I look at my inbox with over 50 referrals to advisors. But I didn't expect that on the front end. And then here we are. And when you think about it, we had met and originally established that referral relationship in February. And you fast forward, what's that, 7, 8 months later? It's actually a short period of time in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
But too often we try and do something and get something in that instant in return, or like within a week, or we say, great, now that we have this, set up, let's have a meeting next week and start giving each other referrals. But it can be a little too aggressive in that sense. But again, it's very difficult to trust that process. But when you fully surrender to it and truly trust it and be kind to other people along the way and work hard along the way, everything comes full circle, I think 10 times more than what you put into that process.
It sounds like you're not imposing these arbitrary timelines on your relationships and your situations. And yeah.
So real quick on that. So there's the various companies that, we consult for and coach for, especially the larger, wirehouses, captive companies, the ones that are more sales oriented, which it's interesting because there's sales oriented companies and then there's service and experience oriented companies. I'm like, oh, if we could just combine those two, like they would be unstoppable, right?
Yeah.
And it's just a very difficult thing to do. A lot of these big companies are slow moving ships that take a while to create some actual change. But anyways, they have these, calendar year or fiscal year, like goals and metrics and contests and all that type of stuff. And I think they're fantastic to motivate people, but I think how it works against them is people, as a response to that, sacrifice the service, the relationship, and the experience to hit that arbitrary date. So what I tell people that I consult for is, listen, I don't care if you hit this metric this year. And if you're looking to hit that metric this year and that's what you're going to judge me on, we're not going to be a fit. What I care about is that on a daily basis, you're creating the habits that of someone that hits those metrics every year. And whether it happens this year, next year, or the year after, we shouldn't care, because what's going to happen is, and what would happen a lot of times at Northwestern is you'd strive for these metrics, you'd become incredibly transactional, you'd hit the metrics, and then the business would fall off the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's the point of that? Like, you feel good because you're in Mexico now on a vacation, but have no money to spend there because all the business fell off that you closed at that time. So I care more so that people are developing the habits that of someone that they want to be like, whether that happens immediately or in 5 or 10 years, it doesn't matter.
I want to thank our listeners, our watchers, our podcast friends, our colleagues out there for being a part of this conversation about conversation. This concludes part 1 of Building Relationships Systematically. Please stay tuned for part 2. We'll be back with David DeCelle, and we'll have more great ideas and tips for building relationships systematically.